The dim light of the setting sun filtered through the narrow window, casting elongated shadows across the cold concrete floor. Shadow Moon sat on the edge of his cot, fingers tracing the worn spine of a paperback he's read a dozen times. Tomorrow he'd be a free man, but the weight in his chest told a different story. An unease had settled in his bones, whispering that freedom might not be the sanctuary he anticipated. As night cloaked the prison, dreams of storm clouds and whispered secrets stirred within him, leaving Shadow to wonder what awaited beyond the bars. Morning arrived with the scent of rain and the sound of distant thunder. Shadow stood before the heavy gates, a small bag in hand, ready to step into a world he had only imagined during long, silent nights. But as he approached the exit, a stern-faced warden intercepted him. "There's been a change," the warden said, eyes devoid of sympathy. The words hit him like a physical blow. His release was postponed. Bewildered and frustrated, Shadow couldn't fathom why. Then, a cryptic message arrived, a phone call delivering news that turned his world upside down. Grief and confusion intertwined, leaving him teetering on the edge of despair. Shadow's unexpected release led to an unsettling journey home. On a turbulent flight, he met a peculiar man with a sharp smile and eyes that seemed to see through him. The stranger was impeccably dressed, exuding an air of confidence and mischief. He seemed to know more about Shadow than a stranger should. Offering him a job, one shrouded in mystery, the man promised things that danced on the edge of belief. Shadow declined, unsettled by the uncanny encounter. Yet, as the flight plunged into a violent storm, reality and illusion blurred. Phantom figures flickered at the edge of his vision, and whispers of ancient secrets stirred in the howling winds. The plane shuddered, and Shadow braced himself, unaware that destiny had other plans. Shadow found himself in a dimly lit bar where the air hung heavy with cigar smoke and whispered secrets. The establishment's worn leather booths and scratched wooden surfaces told stories of countless deals struck in shadows. It was here that Wednesday, a peculiar man with a glass eye and an air of ancient wisdom, made his unexpected proposition. The offer seemed simple enough: become his driver, his errand boy, his right hand. Yet there was something in Wednesday's knowing smile that hinted at deeper currents beneath the surface. As Shadow contemplated the offer over a glass of mead, sweet and ancient tasting, the bar seemed to shift around them, reality bending ever so slightly at the edges. Other patrons appeared normal at first glance, but closer inspection revealed oddities. A woman whose shadow danced independently of her movements, a man whose reflection in the mirror behind the bar showed three different faces. Wednesday's words carried weight beyond their meaning, each syllable resonating with hidden power. When Shadow finally agreed to the arrangement, the very air crackled with unseen energy. Thunder rolled in the distance, though the sky outside was clear. As they sealed their deal with a handshake, Shadow couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just signed away more than just his time. The night deepened around them as Wednesday began revealing the first threads of a tapestry far larger and more intricate than Shadow could have imagined. Strange coincidences began piling up. A lucky coin that never landed tails, shadows that moved against the light, and dreams that felt more real than waking life. As they prepared to leave the bar, Wednesday's final words hung in the air like smoke. "The old gods are stirring, my boy, and we've got front row seats to the show." The neon sign outside flickered ominously as they stepped into the night, casting alternating shadows that seemed to dance with ancient rhythms. The old Cadillac rumbled down the endless highway, its black paint reflecting the golden sunset like liquid obsidian. Shadow sat behind the wheel, his mind still processing the bizarre events of the past few days, while Wednesday dozed in the passenger seat, his fedora tilted over his eyes. The air inside the car felt thick with unspoken secrets, carrying the faint scent of thunderstorms and old leather. Their first stop was a roadside diner that seemed to exist between reality and dream. The neon sign flickered with an otherworldly pulse, and inside they met the enigmatic Mad Sweeney, a towering figure who claimed to be a leprechaun. The night unfolded in a haze of whiskey and impossible coin tricks, culminating in a bet that would haunt Shadow for days to come. As they continued their journey, Wednesday revealed fragments of their true purpose, a gathering of old powers, a council of forgotten gods who once commanded the devotion of millions. Each mile brought them closer to something massive, something that made the air crackle with ancient energy. Their path led them to a mysterious house on the edge of a small town where they encountered three sisters who spoke in riddles and seemed to know far too much about Shadow's past. The eldest sister's warnings about impending storms carried weight beyond mere weather forecasts. The chapter culminates in a midnight meeting at a crossroads, where Shadow witnesses something that challenges everything he thought he knew about reality. A gathering of impossible beings, each more strange than the last, discussing war in whispered tones. As thunder rolls in the distance, Wednesday's true intentions begin to surface, leaving Shadow to question whether he's chosen the right side in a conflict he barely understands. The final scene sees them departing toward Chicago, the Cadillac's headlights cutting through increasingly dense fog, while in the rearview mirror, Shadow swears he can see shadows taking form, following their trail with patient determination. Wednesday's knowing smile suggests this is only the beginning of a journey that will reshape Shadow's understanding of both America and himself. The quaint town of Lakeside emerged from the winter mist like a painting come to life, its Victorian storefronts dusted with fresh snow and holiday lights twinkling despite the approaching dawn. Shadow Moon found himself drawn to this seemingly perfect slice of Americana, where elderly ladies left their doors unlocked and children's mittens hung unclaimed on the town's notice board. Hinzelman, the elderly town historian with his ever-present pipe and endless stories, took Shadow under his wing, sharing tales by the crackling fire in the local diner where the coffee never seemed to run cold. But beneath the town's warm exterior, Shadow sensed something amiss. The annual raffle, centered around guessing when an old car would fall through the frozen lake, drew unusual attention from the townsfolk. Each prediction in Mabel's ledger seemed to carry weight beyond mere gambling stakes. During his walks through snow-covered streets, Shadow noticed how the happiness felt almost prescribed, like a carefully maintained facade. The mystery deepened when Shadow discovered old newspaper clippings in the local library. Every few years, a young person would vanish without trace, always during the coldest days of winter. The librarian's hands trembled slightly when Shadow inquired about these disappearances, her eyes darting to the window where Hinzelman's familiar figure passed by, pipe smoke curling in the frigid air. As Shadow delved deeper into Lakeside's history, the town's perfect veneer began to crack. The warmth of the community felt increasingly like a web, with each friendly greeting and shared secret binding him tighter to this place. Even the clunker on the ice seemed to whisper warnings as Shadow walked past, its metal groaning under winter's grip. One evening, as northern lights danced across the sky, Shadow followed a trail of mysterious footprints leading away from the lake. They ended abruptly at the door of an abandoned storage unit, its lock frozen shut with ice that seemed oddly deliberate. Before he could investigate further, Hinzelman appeared from the shadows, his usually jovial demeanor replaced by something ancient and knowing. The old man's invitation to share another fireside story suddenly felt less like kindness and more like necessity, leaving Shadow to wonder what secrets lay beneath Lakeside's frozen surface. The neon lights of the roadside diner flickered against the rain-streaked windows as Shadow nursed his third cup of coffee. The storm outside was getting worse, but it wasn't just the weather that made his skin prickle. Wednesday sat across from him, his good eye gleaming with an unsettling mixture of mischief and gravity as he laid out the truth about the growing conflict. The old gods were restless, and the new ones were getting bolder. As truckers and late-night travelers shuffled in and out of the diner, Shadow noticed how their shadows seemed to stretch and twist unnaturally against the walls. Each flash of lightning revealed glimpses of something else in their reflections. Ancient faces, digital interfaces, things that shouldn't be there. Wednesday's warnings about the coming war started making more sense. The waitress Mary kept giving them strange looks as she refilled their cups. Shadow couldn't blame her. The air around their booth had grown thick with an electric tension that made the silverware vibrate ever so slightly. When she accidentally brushed against Wednesday's coat while serving pie, Her hand came away sparkling with what looked like stardust. It was then that Mr. Nancy walked in, his yellow suit somehow immaculate despite the downpour, bringing news that made Wednesday's face darken like thunder. The new gods had made their first major move, and it was worse than anyone had anticipated. They weren't just gathering power, they were erasing the old ways entirely, one forgotten shrine at a time. As Shadow listened to their hushed conversation, he noticed a strange symbol appearing and disappearing in his coffee's cream swirls. The storm outside intensified, and for a moment, the diner's lights went out completely. In that brief darkness, Shadow saw the true forms of everyone in the room. Gods, monsters, and humans all stripped bare of their modern disguises. When the lights came back on, he understood that there was no turning back. The gathering storm wasn't just metaphorical anymore, and he was standing right at its center. Wednesday slid a small wooden token across the table, its surface carved with symbols that seemed to move when Shadow wasn't looking directly at them. "Keep this close," he said, his voice carrying the weight of centuries. "The time for choosing sides is coming to an end." As they left the diner, the bell above the door chimed with an otherworldly tone, and Shadow could have sworn he saw constellations swirling in the puddles beneath their feet.